What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, where for today's video, prepare for extermination when it comes down to both your bank balance and your collections. But firstly, let's very quickly recap the first wave that we can expect to see from Transformers Studio Series heading into 2025. So as part of New York Comic Con, Hasbro revealed the Deluxe Class Rise of the Beast Double Punch, Dark the Moon Hatchet, the Voyager Class War for Cybertron Skywarp, and the incredibly controversial Leader Class 86 movie Galvatron, who I believe were only 4 out of the rumoured 7 reveals for Wave 1. So fast forward to this weekend, MCM London Comic Con and Hasbro have finally dropped the official reveals for the final 3. The first being Deluxe Class Bumblebee, inspired by the Bumblebee movie, and to my surprise this is specifically based on the Volkswagen Beetle design. Despite us previously seeing a version of that character released as part of the Studio Series, I believe way back during the 2018 toy line. Gonna be entirely honest, guys, this decimates what we saw originally. As I'm sure you guys are all aware, I regard the SS86 as being by far one of the weakest entries into the lineup, so it's great to see Hasbro kind of correct the mistakes of the past, and despite this steel pack in the door wings, which was definitely the biggest inaccuracy of the original, I really like how these can be positioned downwards to, at least from the front, create for a pretty movie accurate look. This guy does transform into an officially licensed Volkswagen Beetle, and after seeing this design again, to be entirely honest, it makes me really wish that they didn't change this so much when it came round to Transformers Rise of the Beasts. And one thing which is even more exciting than the actual figure itself would be the possibility of remakes that we could potentially expect to see in the future. Personally, I would love to see Hasbro redo the likes of Age of Extinction Stinger and specifically Age of Extinction Lockdown. The original Deluxe Class version, whilst was an improvement in comparison to his original version, still was kinda lackluster. Lockdown was by far one of the best live action movie characters, so I would love to see Hasbro maybe remake him as a Voyager class and pack him out with all of the bells and whistles that we saw in the movie, specifically the iconic gun face, because it was an absolute letdown not to see it included originally. The next reveal was the Voyager class Rise of the Beast Optimus Prime, which is a direct re-release of the version that we originally saw as part of the 2023 buzzworthy Bumblebee lineup. Seeing as this guy will now be released at regular mass retail, it means that he will be way easier to track down in comparison to the original version, and if you are like myself and don't have targets in your country, this will be a great second opportunity. And then the final figure to be released as part of Wave 1 for Studio Series would be the Rise of the Beast Leader Class Ape-Link, which will be a retool of Optimus Primal. He will be packing brand new heads for both modes, shoulders and forearms. He will also include 2 brand new blades, the 2 chains that we did see originally with Primal, and then finally the Transwarp Key. Would have been amazing had they maybe upscaled him to better match what we actually saw in the film, but considering the minimal role that Ape-Link did have in the movie, I imagine that it just really wouldn't be worth Hasbro's while. Now, physical reveals weren't the only thing shown off as part of MCM London Comic Con this year, as if you are a fan of the Bayverse, then you guys are gonna love some of these Through the Space Bridge reveals, which pretty much tease the entire lineup that we can expect to see as part of Wave 2, which I do believe is set to release in April of 2025. And it's great that instead of using CG renders of the characters, they used renders of the actual figures, giving us a pretty good indication as to what we can expect once they are finally released. So firstly, we can expect a Studio Series 86 Deluxe Class Chaz, which, at least judging by this image, appears to be a direct re-release of the original version that we did see as part of Wave 1 for the 86 movie line. Gonna be entirely honest, guys, I'm really not sure as to why they have decided to repack this guy, because it wasn't that long ago that we also saw him reissued in way more movie accurate colours as part of the Legacy United Autobots 5-pack, so this will most definitely, I believe, be a big shelf warmer, and to be entirely honest, I really think again they could have given this slot to a character which is way more deserving of a reissue. The next Deluxe Class figure they teased though quite literally left me needing to change my pants, as this was the long rumoured Transformers Studio Series Dark of the Moon Deluxe Class Q. Now, the original 2011 version was cancelled, which meant that not only was it super elusive but also incredibly expensive. It was also incredibly limited when it came down to articulation. This one, judging by this CG render, appears to be way more accurate, and surprisingly, despite this being modern release, appears to be absolutely kitted out with a ton of weapons. He's going to include the staff, some form of blaster, as well as some additional attachments that you can see packed to the waist belt. And the head sculpt looks banging. When it comes around to Studio Series, they appear to always knock it out of the park in that department. So I'm most definitely very excited to finally get my hands on this guy. And again guys, if you were a fan like myself of Transformers during the late 2000s, then the reveals really just kept on giving, because the next one will be a Voyager class War for Cybertron Ironhide, which, as I'm sure we all expected, will be a retool of Ratchet, a figure that I did fairly recently check out, and I've got to be honest, one of the best Gamer Edition figures they've so far dropped. Judging by this CG render, they appear to have changed the head, the shoulders, surprisingly the chest, as well as the weapons, and he looks fantastic, even better than Ratchet potentially. Unfortunately, when it does come down to these Through the Space Bridge reveals, they never actually showed off what the vehicle modes for any of these are going to look like, but I would imagine it would be fairly close to Ratchet, again to match what we did actually see in the video games. Now we turn to Leader Class, and for this one guys, you either stand with us or you stand against me, as Hasbro finally dropped the reveal for the Studio Series Leader Class Age of Extinction Optimus Prime, and honestly it's kind of a mixed bag. This will be based on his Western star design, so it will not be the Evasion Mode Optimus Prime, a version of that character which I do really hope they get to eventually in the future. Honestly, it's kind of hard to judge right now from this unfinished render alone. It was mentioned that the final product will have way more colour. I'm hoping flames, as he does appear to be completely devoid of any of those, despite that being easily one of the most distinctive design traits of the Bayverse Optimus Prime. Right now, not looking to be too much of an improvement in comparison to the Transformers The Last Knight Voyager class version. It will definitely be interesting to see though how they do justify that Leader class price point, as I do presume he will have to be exactly the same size as the previously released Voyager class Galvatron, who to be honest arguably had an even harder design to translate into a toy. But as of right now, yeah, that backpack still be looking kinda thick. And then the final reveal to round off Wave 2 entirely, I'm sure we'll be sending shockwaves through the battlefield, as this will be the Studio Series Dark of the Moon Leader Class Shockwave. And judging by this CG render, it appears to be a direct repack of what we did see, I believe, during 2019. This is going to be a great second opportunity in owning what I do regard as being one of the best Studio Series figures of all time. Honestly, if you were to compare that figure against the actual CG render, there are next to no differences. They did a banging job, so for those who did miss out on this first time round, most definitely be sure that you do hop on it for this second time. And that is a wrap for all of the Wave 2 Studio Series figures that we can expect to see released around April time. The only downside to these reveals for myself would be that this does now confirm that Core Class has most definitely been scrapped when it comes down to the Transformers mainline, which is a shame, especially in the case of some of those smaller Bayverse characters. I would have loved more than anything to have seen a brand new version of Dark of the Moon Laserbeak, Revenge of the Fallen Ravage. They maybe could have even approached some of the kitchen appliances that we did see brought to life by the Shard of the Allspark in the Revenge of the Fallen movie. But I would be lying to you guys if I didn't say that I was absolutely thrilled to see the Bayformers back in Studio Series, and I would love to know, out of all of the ones revealed so far, which is the one you guys are the most excited for. Devastating our way into Hasbro's 1027 event, we finally saw the long-awaited official reveal for the Transformers Studio Series 86 Devastator, and I think it's safe to say that the Transformers team told us pretty much all we need to know going into this combiner. So firstly, the Constructicons will be split over 3 waves across 2025, which should hopefully make this way easier to collect in comparison to even the Revenge of the Fallen version or Menasor from Transformers Legacy, as they do make a specific mention to Breakdown being incredibly elusive due to him being released as part of the second year of Legacy and not in the first, unlike some of the other Stunticons. So when it comes down to the first wave of Constructicons, these right now are set to be released in April of 2025, and they will consist of Bone Crusher, who is the deluxe class, and the leader of the Constructicons, Scrapper, who will be a Voyager class. Now when it does come down to the Constructicons in their entirety, apparently they should all be roughly the same in size, very comparable to what we have seen from the 86 movie Ironhide, and overall will have much stronger standalone robot modes in comparison to the Combiner Wars version, which definitely was a weak aspect aspect of that Titan class, the overall combined mode was most definitely decent, but if you were to break it apart into the individual Constructicons, all of them most definitely had their flaws, and some of them I don't even believe had proper elbow joints. Now, despite being roughly a deluxe in size, Scrapper justifies that Voyager class price point due to him packing the internal ratchet joint which is needed for the ankle of the combined mode, and he will also include Devastator's blaster. Now, as far as Bone Crusher goes, again, for the most part looking decent. I do think, at least from some of these product images, that maybe the forearms are slightly too stubby, but the vehicle mode mostly looks bang on. Now, in terms of the combined mode, he will form both the shoulder and bicep of Devastator. Now, there may be some of you wondering who exactly will then form the forearm and hand of the combined mode, and that then leads us on to the next two Constructicons, which right now are set to be released in July of 2025, and this will in fact be the first ever Commander Class 2-pack. This will consist of both Constructicon Longhaul and Hook, and it was said that these are going to be roughly what you would expect from a Voyager class when it comes down to both plastic and engineering. Now, to truly justify that Commander Class price point, right now it is rumoured that these will include the forearms, the hands, the hips, the thighs, the chest plate, and possibly even Devastator's head. It was also very briefly teased that these extra components, when not used for the combined mode, may even form a trailer for Longhaul to tow when he is in his truck mode, which will definitely be pretty interesting. And it was also briefly mentioned that these will form, really to nobody's surprise, the entire upper torso of Devastator. And then we turn to the final two Constructicons, which right now are set to release in September of 2025, and these include Scavenger, who is set to be a deluxe class, and then finally Mixmaster, who is a Voyager class. And as I'm sure you guys all know, once all six Constructicons unite, they merge to form Devastator, who despite right now only being a grey prototype, looks pretty fantastic. Now, don't get me wrong, the Combiner Wars version is still decent, and I know to some will remain as being the best, especially as it did do a good job when it came down to that combined mode, but this overall I think will be way much more fun to mess with. It appears to be slightly taller in comparison to the Legacy Menasor, but definitely much beefier, which I know to some may come across as being a little underwhelming, again, especially in comparison to the height of the Combiner Wars version, but to be fair, the animation was always fairly inconsistent with scale, and it was specifically said by the design team that this is accurate to the official scale charts. It does appear as if though this will be incredibly sturdy, and also appears to be super articulated. I thought the best thing about Menasor is that he wasn't ridiculously oversized. You were still able to pose him almost just as well as you would a deluxe Voyager and Leader, and it was even teased that the shoulder joints are tough enough so that you will be able to take a hold of Dinobot Sludge and have this guy yeeting him through the air to match what we did see during the Battle of Autobot City. And I think it's great to finally see a near completed prototype of the finished Devastator combined mode. When it came down to the Revenge of the Fallen version, unfortunately it ended up looking almost nothing like what was first shown, due to them I believe using unfinished parts that couldn't even transform. So right now I am incredibly impressed with what has so far been shown off, and it really does feel like Studio Series is back, and back with a bang. So to very quickly give you guys a recap when it comes down to the Constructicons, April 2025 is when you can expect Deluxe Class Bone Crusher and Voyager Class Scrapper. July 2025 is when they will release the Commander Class 2-pack of both Longhaul and Hook, and then September 2025 will be the final two Constructicons, Deluxe Class Scavenger and Voyager Class Mixmaster. And that right there, guys, is a wrap when it comes down to Devastator. Definitely well worth the hype in my opinion. I would love to know what you guys think so far. What are your thoughts when it comes down to the individual Constructicons and of course the overall combined mode? Now, despite Hasbro's 1027 event being absolutely dominated by Devastator, he wasn't the only big talking point, as Hasbro also dropped the first reveal as to what we can expect as we are very quickly heading into Transformers Age of the Primes. And it's a big one. They dropped the reveal for the 13th Prime Leader Class, Megatronus the Fallen, who appears to be heavily inspired by the original Dreamwave design, and he looks incredible in both modes. Super chunky, even appears to have articulated over opening hands, he will include the Requiem Blaster, which they say has the power to drain not only black holes, but to end worlds. So when it does come down to that tank mode, they have slapped on a suppressor so that he is able to wipe out his enemies without pretty much destroying himself. He will also include the Spark Fuser Staff, which apparently is a direct throwback to the 2015 Robots in Disguise TV show. This bad boy can also be flipped around and transformed into a full-blown double-sided machete. But those ain't even the best out of the bunch, as this guy will also include 4 brand new Flaming Blast effects to recreate the internal furnace this guy has going on in the comics, which I think looks sick. The tank mode looks equally as good and even has proper rolling wheels, something which I don't believe we've seen on a tank former in an incredibly long time, and you guys just know that this isn't the last we're going to see from this mold. I almost feel that taking into account the chunkiness of this guy, we could even see a much better version of the IDW Tarn to squash the complaints that perhaps the legacy version was too slim. Even the packaging is banging and potentially teases / confirms Star Convoy as the Titan class, although the design does appear to be almost a hybrid between that and the Power Master Optimus Prime, especially when you begin to zoom into that chest design. But right now, super impressive. Despite this year being the 40th anniversary, it looks like Next is about to absolutely decimate it. And that right there, guys, is a wrap. Everything that was officially teased / shown off as part of this weekend for both MCM London Comic Con and Hasbro's 1027 event. And again, definitely be sure to sound off down below what you think of the Studio Series 86 Devastator. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video, transform and roll out!